I genuinely think it's a betrayal of the isolationist policy that he rode
Mhm.
into office on, right? And the notion of betrayal is so piercing right now, I think in the wake of the Epstein stuff. This idea that you sold us a bill of goods. You are not who you said you were going to be.
Mhm.
This, I think, war it ties into the Epstein betrayal. It's its own sort of betrayal. And that's what's riled MAGA's hackles so much, or at least some MAGA folks. It's an emotional sense that, Daddy said something to us, and then he lied to us, and then he lied again to us, and we are mad at Daddy.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Best People podcast. This week's guest is one of my favorite people. She truly is one of the best people. On those days that I'm not quite enthused about anchoring 2 hours about the destruction Trump has wrought in America, my team will say, guess what? Wags is on set, and it resets the whole day for me. So without any further ado, the host of Runaway Country, my dear friend Alex Wagner. Hi.
Hi, my friend.
That's a true story. When I am feeling like, we're going to start with a war and then do the end of the rule of law
I'm
and then
so
do
honored.
anti-Semitism, and then we're going to do the people dying in detention. And they're like, but Wags is on set. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God,
yay!
girl. And then I come out there and I rail against the administration and conjure doomsdays. And you're like, thank you and goodbye. We all feel worse.
No, I
No,
don't ever
it's
feel worse. I mean, I feel like the thing that makes me feel better is that 65% of the country is like, oh yeah, no, I
hard
don't
pass.
want that.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. And it's important, I think, for us to both inform them, but also give voice to the rage and dissatisfaction and depression and all of it, because it's a very emotional experience we're all living through.
But I love that that animates Runaway Country. It's that we can't just have the distance from what is causing us pain, that this is transpiring in our country, but that's who you're out there connecting us to.
Trying to. I mean, it's hard. I will say it's particularly hard in this administration because so many people who are right in the center of things are terrified to speak.
Yeah.
But we speak with a retired master sergeant who used to work in the Pentagon in their civilian protection unit and who was fired last year and who was one of the people on the team that would have been tasked with making sure, say, the United States didn't conduct Tomahawk missile strike on a girls' elementary school in Iran, and has just a visceral, emotional accounting of what it was like to watch that strike, knowing that it could have been prevented, knowing that it was our strike immediately. And then also trying to put into context what it means to be the country that makes this its value statement out, overseas. This is who we are. This is being done in our names and kind of wrestling with all of that. So I think one of the things that when you get a constant stream of bad news all the time, you sort of get a little bit numb to it. And we need to, it's not that we need to re-traumatize ourselves every hour, but I think personal stories really help bring an emotional resonance to it that I think is important, not just for us to be engaged in the story, but also to work through it as citizens and human beings. So I don't know, that's what we try. Sometimes we fail.
I think that's all that we have. I mean, and you look at where there's been a retreat from Trump, and it's not in a lot of places, but, Liam Ramos, Renee Nicole Good, Alex
Yes.
Preddy. I mean, we now had a new nominee to lead that department singing from a totally different songbook. I don't know that he's made of different stuff than Christy, I Shot My Dog, and I wrote about it in my own book, Gnome.
R.I.P. Cricket.
Cricket might get the last laugh.
I mean, we will never forget Cricket's name.
I think it's everything you need to know about someone's character, not just that they shoot their puppy in the head for being too frisky, but that they are the storyteller of shooting their puppy.
And think it's a good story.
Right.
And think it's a masterclass in leadership. That makes Cruella de Vil look like PETA. You know what I'm saying? That is not what we want out of our leaders. And so now the bar is so low that a former UFC fighter is
who cheered physical violence against Rand Paul.
Well, that's a huge question, right? I mean, I feel like we are awoken to this deep American lust, or at least this White House tells us, that we want to be more violent. Not just not PC, but the way they're couching this war, the way they're packaging it in terms of video games and NFL games and lethality.
Here comes the heat from the USA. Boom! Pins down. What a strike. That's right. What do you think
like, forget the human cost of things. Like, just go for it and shoot the gun, whether it's at your dog or at an enemy or at a civilian, is like, it suggests that, America was born out of violence, right?
Mhm.
It was a revolution, slavery, etc. Blood is on our hands. But the idea that we celebrate and lust for death and bloodshed is some dark business. And this administration keeps telling us over and over again that that's what we want. And sometimes the polling reflects that there is a certain segment of this country
Mhm.
that does want that. And I don't know where it comes from, because I think it's separate and apart from like the phenomenon of loneliness and disengagement. It's something darker and really poisonous that I think lives within us and our body politic.
It's what makes it so fascinating that the strike on the girls' school in Iran is so divisive within the MAGA movement.
Hmm.
I mean, some of the first political indictments, I guess, came from Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, and Megyn Kelly. And I don't know if it gets at the violence piece or just the isolationism piece, but you go back to things being done in our name. The strike on the girls' school is something that isn't sitting well, even with those high-profile members of Trump's coalition.
I can't believe I'm going to say this sentence. I want to give Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson credit that it's about the moral stain and not just, oh, we're involved in foreign adventurism. But I genuinely think it's a betrayal of the isolationist policy that he rode
Mhm.
into office on, right? And the notion of betrayal is so piercing right now, I think, in the wake of the Epstein stuff. This idea that you sold us a bill of goods. You are not who you said you were going to be.
Mhm.
This, I think, war it ties into the Epstein betrayal. It's its own sort of betrayal. And that's what's riled MAGA's hackles so much, or at least some MAGA folks. It's an emotional sense that, daddy said something to us, and then he lied to us, and then he lied again to us. And we are mad at daddy. I say that as Tucker
Yeah,
as the
yeah.
young child.
No, and like it is such it's so gross from the outside, but it is such an intimate
Mhm.
like the reason MAGA rolled to the Republican nomination 3 times and the presidency twice is because of the intimacy of the relationship with Trump,
Totally.
right? It was paternalistic. But I wonder if you think that emotional piece has frayed or if it's all that remains.
I mean, beyond just the emotional, sort of the visceral connection, and I
To
would
him.
say that there's almost a religious connection
Yeah.
too, just from my time reporting on like going out to Trump rallies and stuff. There is a revivalist
Yeah.
aspect of all of this, that and his positioning himself as the top of the pyramid of white Christian nationalism is like a powerful thing with some
Which in
segments.
that description, like the white is the only thing that he's really got, right?
Yeah,
Like
it is
like
not
he's not
Christian,
Christian.
and I don't national. I mean, it's jingoism masked as patriotism, but
Right.
it's not true love of country. He's sending American service members to get killed overseas and says, "That's war." He goes to a dignified transfer in a baseball hat and doesn't go to one. He doesn't talk about these deaths. He just says, "That's the way it is. Suck it up." But I think his pull, his emotional like claws are still in the base. And it becomes actually, I think, not to play armchair psychologist, I'll leave that to Dax Shepard, but like,
See, we are such podcasters now.
oh, like, thank you, internet, for catching up with my soul. Do you know? I mean, yes. Am I allowed to curse on this? I'm not
Yeah, oh
going
no,
to.
yeah, yeah. Like the only thing that feels adventurous in my life is when the podcast has like the explicit rating.
I'll give
Okay.
you the E.
Okay.
But I was going to say the not to play armchair psychologist, but I do think the more people are forced to defend Trump, the more they dig in, because it's not about Trump anymore. It's
Right.
about their own ego. And it's like, I
Well,
rode for this dude through
3
all of
elections.
this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not backing
not getting
down
off.
now.
Yeah.
Because it would be a humiliation.
Do you have anyone in your life, personal life, that's a Trumper that you have to
Yes.
navigate? So do I. In some ways, it's never been easier. Like, okay, I'm so sorry you didn't get your isolationism, your tax cuts, or your cheap stuff. Are you okay? And in other ways, it's never been more distressing to see that they're still like
They're still on
riding
board.
with Don.
But that's where it's like, these become, at least for me, much more psychological than political conversations. It's much more like, how are you hurting? Like, how is this man filling a gap or making you feel not less than? Like, and how can we, as your friends, family members, or society, help? I mean, not everybody can be dealt with like this, but I feel like because I have personal relationships with these people, it's like, okay, how do we like fill in the cracks here so that you can understand that what this like drug dealer is promising you is a short-term high at great expense. So, I mean, it's not even like I try and argue immigration policy anymore. It's just
Right.
like, why are you lonely? Why are you sad? Why are you depressed? Why are you angry? You know, like, let's get at that.
We've talked about our Trump people as like people in a cult that you can't
Yeah.
engage them at an intellectual level. You just have to respect their belief system, like as though they were nudists. And you would like hope they'd cover their parts when you visited, but you love them the same. But like it's so because it's so detached from the reasons they were part of it to begin with. It has obviously
Totally.
nothing to do with isolationism. It obviously has nothing to do with economic growth. I mean, we are on the precipice of economic catastrophe right now. You have to respect that it's the other stuff.
I mean, the only issue where he's truly delivered that actually has kept people in his corner, come what may, is the abortion issue. Like, diehard pro-lifers feel like he delivered
On
them
the Supreme
on
Court.
the Supreme
Yeah.
Court. I think that's a group that's separate and apart from I would say the majority of MAGA. But to your point about the cults, it's not about directly combating them on why they think Black and brown people should be rounded up en masse and deported to prisons that have no bearing on their lives. You know, it's about, I think, going around the circular driveway and coming to the house the long way.
So you went to Minneapolis. I mean, you did our show a bunch of times from there. I think that when we look back at how we started to get out of this, if we get out of this, which I think is still
It's an
a
option.
question we should be asking, do we get out of this? I think the survivors of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's abuse who have gone to Washington and insisted upon being totally bipartisan in their private and public interactions with members. And the people of Minneapolis will be the first steps that the rest of us sort of stood on to try to climb out of this moment.
Totally. Can I say one thing to people who don't know what it's like to have a friend and a colleague like you? It's like I have these very distinct memories of being in like very chaotic, important situations on the ground. And it's always, Nicole wants you. Can you do the hit? Like I have a distinct memory of being outside like a protest at the Treasury Department and being like, hold on, Senator. I'm like, I'm doing a hit for Nicole on the phone. Like, you're so
I remember
awesome.
that.
You're always, it's just like, put her on the phone. Let's go wherever you are.
Because
Like,
I
you're-
love like the drive-by.
Oh
like
my-
she
I'm
can't get a
so
shot up.
good.
I'm like, just have her call.
I know, or
you
like
know?
outside the jail at January. I mean, just
Yeah.
anytime
Yes.
I'm in the field, I feel like you're such an incredible friend and a supporter of fields reporting. And it is like so. I have undying admiration for you for the fact that you are always so game for it. Like wherever
It's
the
our
fuck I am.
lifeblood. It is our lifeblood. And I mean, I have clips that I still play from you. I think you worked for the circus.
Yeah.
When you did all that militia reporting. Because
Yeah.
I remember I was like, wait, what?
I know. Me,
The people
well,
in
me
the
too.
Wait, no, because I think your reporting on the militias was the first time I was like, oh, why are they on camera? Like I remember, like I'm old enough to remember when militia members had
Yeah.
like their voice altered and the black screen, and you were out there with like 8 of them
Before the election.
before the election, well before Trump was like riding with the militias. They were talking to you for the
And
circus.
they were like, if Trump loses the 2020 election, it's gonna be the next
and
Civil War.
they said Civil War to you.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, if Trump wins, then the election is not fraudulent. If Biden wins, then it is fraudulent.
Absolutely.
Does that mean you guys are going to take to the streets and say, hell no, this is not a legitimate outcome?
Yeah, well, I woke up a free man this morning, and on November 4th, I'll wake up a free man, and if I feel I need to go overturn a fraudulent election, then nobody on earth is going to hold me
I
back.
feel that our country is more in danger from the domestic terrorists than we are from foreign enemies. The original Civil War has nothing on what's coming.
And I think that was the first time I really processed what had happened or what the coalition on the right looked like. That it wasn't a bug that the random militia person was like, he's our guy. It was a feature.
Yes. And I will say, like, being there and talking to them, I remember they were smoking cigarettes and they were packing heat and they were just like, and I remember thinking, I feel like we are in a very precarious situation, both me and also
But they
the
love
country.
talking to you.
Yes, and I think that that is it's I mean, and I genuinely do like talking to people from all over the place, especially people who are radically different than me. But there's this huge debate about who we platform. And I'm like, I'm a journalist and my
Yeah, I
job
think the debate's over, right? Like we've had 3 elections. Trump won 2 of them.
It's like-
we should like let our curiosity run wild
And we should
wherever it
ask
takes us,
questions.
or wherever it takes us. Like I think that people wanting to get to the bottom of that is super important. And you were doing it ahead of January 6th.
Yeah.
It's super important after January 6th. Like, how did that happen? I mean, you have some of the only reporting on what they were prepared for.
We were out in the field and I was in Georgia and I was like the 3%er, like I'm always trying to get at like what's bubbling up on the ground. And it was for The Circus, which was a weekly documentary series on Showtime, RIP. And I had been just hearing all this chatter and like some like loose reporting about how people were ready to take up arms for Trump, and these militias, a lot of whom were in Georgia, were ready to go ham. And I said, let's talk to them. And so we reached out and they were interested in speaking. I think in part because they were like, no, we're really serious about this. And they like the idea that they're conjuring fear in the hearts of libs, right? That's a huge part of the appeal of being in MAGA.
And
Like,
precious Republicans.
totally. And just displaying their unwavering support for Trump and their deep conviction that the system was rigged. I mean, those are the people who are betrayed by both foreign intervention and the Epstein thing, because they really buy into this idea, which is not entirely untrue, that a cabal of elites is making decisions that they have to pay for, whether they are women and innocents and children who are trafficked for the delight and to be play toys for the ultra rich, or whether they are working class and middle class boys and girls who are sent overseas and become collateral damage in a war of choice. Like they pay the price, or just as taxpayers, they pay billions of dollars every week so that Donald Trump can burnish his ego. And Trump has done nothing to disabuse him of those, that feeling that the system is rigged. I mean, they wanted to talk to me about the election being rigged, about media being rigged, about Tucker Carlson being in the pocket of Rupert Murdoch. Like they saw conspiracy everywhere. And they felt like, someone who's going to give them a platform to explain how rigged the system was someone worth talking to.
Where do you think they are right now?
Jail? No, I mean, I do. Some of them I
They're
think were
pardoned, right?
involved
Yeah.
in Gen 6.
Yeah.
A lot of them were former military, former cops. I don't know where they are in their support of Trump. But, these are people that work working class jobs, which I assume they've gone back to. They would on the weekends do their basic training. They all had noms de guerre and they would, run around with guns on the weekend. But like they used that training on January 6th, and if you look at ICE, I mean, maybe some of them are ICE officers.
Yeah.
Trump has developed a paramilitary force and it's been a multi-year recruitment effort.
I mean, it takes us to Minneapolis where you were on
Oh,
the
yes. I
ground.
didn't even answer your question.
No. But I mean, that was sort of the other side, if you will, right? That was citizens, moms. There were signal chat groups, men and women, old and young, who saw what ICE was doing on their streets in the killing of 2 American citizens, and a lot of them out there protesting for the first time in their lives.
Totally. I mean, I was in DC with Epstein survivors when they were going to take that big vote on the Hill. And I remember thinking, man, like it wasn't a strategy to take politics out of it. It was just like we were abused. We were wounded in deep and abiding ways at tender ages, and we want justice. This literally has nothing to do with R or D. This has to do with humanity. And we are going to try and keep this we're going to try and center women and their stories of survival in all of this. And like, you would hear them talk and you'd think, okay, like this is why everybody's gonna, like you guys driving the bus forward with your stories of injury and resilience are gonna be the ones that actually get this stupid fucking Congress to do something collectively in a bipartisan fashion. I mean, all credit goes to them because to survive that is one thing, but then to be brave enough to be like, I'm going to go and march forward on Capitol Hill and say, you need to help me do something about this takes like cojones. Sorry, I guess not cojones, but it takes backbone and I don't know, tenacity that most people don't have, right?
Well, and the fact that they're still that there's still a debate about whether or not they're telling the truth. Like, how many women have to come out and tell the same story about Jeffrey Epstein for people to say maybe the hundreds of women who have the same tales of abuse and trafficking are onto something?
And this phenomenon that exists in our society and other societies, but I'm just going to focus on America right now, that there are these powerful men that like visit abuses that like are hard to conjure, you know, in your mind on children, and that the society, our society, like lets it pass or is tacitly okay enough with it that the victims don't feel like they can say anything.
Or we debate whose fault it was.
Right.
Like
How'd
it's
you
a
put yourself in that
two-sides thing.
position?
Wow, they look like, I mean, with Epstein, they were a quarter to a third of his age.
I know. Well, with Cesar Chavez, we're talking about 8-year-olds being groomed.
It's
and
disgusting.
It's disgusting. And that so like we're coming to this huge reconciliation, and yet the person we keep electing is, I'm not saying he's on the level in terms of abuse of Epstein or Chavez, but is so poisonous himself and such an abuser of power and such a denier of facts and reality, and has not said anything that makes you think he has any amount of empathy for these women or victims of sexual abuse at all, because he himself has been found civilly liable for
Right.
sexual assault. You know, I have a hard time squaring like where we are going as a society, right? Which is to sort of have a full accounting of like what happened and try and circle the wagons and figure out like how do we allow power structures like this to remain in place? And then politically, like why we are championing like Big Daddy who's going to come home and spank you. You know, like that. I mean, that was
Sick.
literally what
And
Tucker's
And women vote for.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I have a hard time squaring their enthusiasm for someone who describes what he can do to women as, you know, when you're famous, you can do it. I can grab him between the legs. Actually, I now am reckoning with whether we shouldn't have just said what he said all these years. Grab him in the pussy.
Yeah.
I mean, some of our editing of him, I think, is how he got elected twice.
normalizes it.
It normalizes it and it cleans it off.
Yeah.
If it were jarring, you would actually be getting him as he intended it, right? He's a grown-ass man who makes up his own, when he speaks in sentences, when they're just grunts, they're grunts. But whatever it is he says, he's saying what he's saying. He's an adult. And there's never been an adult in public life who's been more consistently edited, sort of copy edited and sanitized for political consumption, because there's never been a figure like him in our politics.
I know. And I mean, I think woulda, coulda, shoulda a lot with Trump.
Shithole countries.
All of it.
Grab him in the pussy.
We-
Everything he says is so jarring that you know, the smart and good and decent people and standards, you can't say that on TV. Okay, but what if we had?
Well, I think it's a bit of a burying your head in the sand. Like it's, oh, we can't say these words because it's too coarse and our society doesn't accept that. Like we have a set of standards here.
Right.
And it's like, well, like this is the president of the United
And
States.
like hundreds of millions of people don't. Like,
Yeah.
they-
And like, this is what they want. Like
Right.
they've made the choice. I mean, I will always push back against Trump when he is at his worst, or even when he's not at his worst. But like, you have to understand that he is reflective of a certain kind of thinking in this country, and has been chosen twice to lead it. So like, yeah, if he's put shithole countries on the table, then I guess we're gonna repeat his words, not in agreement, but like just as a reminder that
a quote.
that's the value
Yeah.
set of that guy.
Yeah, and I think Bill Barr describing the election conspiracies as bullshit is just an important window into how they tried to talk Trump down ahead of January 6th. And I feel like it's like, what, you're 10, it feels like you're 87, and we're still trying to figure out how to cover Trump.
Yeah, well, but that's because it's just the mendacity. I mean, we're in the middle of a war. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and this guy in the middle of this war, like this boggles the mind, is trying to railroad through Congress a voter suppression act that would require every state in the union to give its voter rolls over to the federal government. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's his only midterm strategy, at the same time that he's dispatching his top officials to go seize voter rolls from the 2020 election to prove that like our entire
including the
democracy is-
DNI in what was, now we know, the walk up to war.
Yes.
I mean, so Tulsi, the war starts, and I remember thinking the last time we saw the national security people in public,
They
Pam
were in
Bondi,
Georgia.
Right, well, Tulsi Gabbard was at an election office in Fulton County. Pam Bondi was at a hearing refusing to turn around and acknowledge the victims of Epstein's sexual abuse. And Kash Patel was guzzling beer in Milan at the Olympics. That's who's in charge of protecting the homeland as we go to war.
Yeah. And in the middle of all this, Trump is interested in the war because it's politically problematic for him because gas prices are high, but really is focused like a laser on the SAVE Act and the way in which he can continue to undermine confidence in the elections, because when Democrats win the House, he's going to try and do everything in his power not to let the gavel go to Hakeem Jeffries' hands, because it will be painful for his last 2 years in office. And my God, I hope they're only 2. I mean, I think probably on his way out, what we're going to be debating is Trump currency. It's going to be like the fanfare of the ego will be in full flower. And like Trump will be trying to enshrine his legacy in the most public and monumental ways. And like that will be his focus in the last year.
What do you make of the Democrats?
I don't know. What do I make of the Democrats, Nicole? I think there's look, I am not forlorn at all about the talent. There's like an extraordinary bench, and you see it at the state level more than anything anywhere else. I think they have been disappointingly, like, there is a tendency, I think, for them to say, the man speaks for himself. Like, look at this insanity, and to not propose a more viable alternative. I think that's hard to do, A, when you don't have power, and B, when you have a coalition as big. But I am hopeful that they have learned some lessons. I mean, Trump has shown everybody in American politics, like, fucking go for it, right? Like, you got one shot or maybe 2, and like, listen to your gut, be ambitious, don't worry about the spin. Like you like own it all, never apologize. Like, I hope the Democrats, BYO some of that, like, the can of whip ass that like.
Who do you see doing any of that though?
I
Gavin Newsom's doing some of it.
Gavin Newsom is a master of the medium of communication. I like that a lot. I think, at the state level, I like how you can be in an executive position and also have a little bit of attitude. And we've seen that from some governors.
Yeah.
I think in the Senate, there are some voices that have emerged from the woodwork that are more courageous. I mean, I also think like John Ossoff made a great argument.
He had a great outing.
He's done
with Gabbard. Yeah.
Yeah. And the way they've knit together all of Trump's actions into a web of corruption, I think is incredibly.
Cory Booker's been a really good storyteller.
Corey's been good. I think Chris
Murphy's
does
been
great job
phenomenal.
talking to people. I mean, I think that there's talent there. I just think when you're the party in the wilderness in terms of power, it's just harder to have everybody get together and be on the same page and do something meaningful. But they are trying. And I think the fact that they're willing to shut down the government and say, this is a principled fight, we're going to fucking have it, is indicative of a party that's found a little backbone in the intervening like last 8 years. So
I also think the 6 that have fought with him over the illegal orders, like just from the day that story broke to now, like being in a fight with him makes you a better politician in this time, because what the base wants desperately is fighters. I don't think any of them really wanted to be in a fight with him, but from their life experiences, they thought it was important to convey. I worry that they haven't done like the back end stuff. Like, what's their TikTok strategy? What's their answer to the manosphere? What's their, like, you've got 65% of the country available for your message, for your party. Make your party better, make your party more fun. Where is the party?
It feels leaderless right now, right? Which can be both a strength and a weakness. Right now, there are like 25 different voices that are doing discrete things, whether it's Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin over here, or Corey, or Chris, or, JB or Gavin, right? But I do think, to your point, like, there needs to be some shepherd that is involved in all of this. And I think the 2028 primaries are going to be full bonkers. Like, I am a little stressed about that because like I said before, it's such a big tent, and like AOC is an amazing like interlocutor, organizer, a voice. But then you also have people like, I mean, what Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin have been doing is like portrait and courage, right? So like you need all these voices, but like getting them to agree on an immigration policy or an energy policy, healthcare policy is going to be very, very, very
and
trying.
like only the Democratic Party views those as the steps for consensus, right? The Republicans nominated an insurrectionist. So like that, like what has vexed me since 2015 is the asymmetry that he creates. Like the asymmetry is the hallmark of politics in the sign of Trump. And to your point, I think that will still be the Democrats' process, and that is totally asymmetrical.
Totally. And I mean, like, I genuinely think that, like, if you learn anything from Trump, it's like pick your position and then go sell it.
Right.
Because I think, first of all, Trump has just broken so much shit that,
Right.
like, you could come in there with any idea. And first of
Right.
all, if it's a coherent idea, that's a bonus. But also, if you can sell it and you believe it and you have the conviction, I do think if Democrats have learned anything, it's like go along with the person who's going to pitch this the best, who has an idea with conviction that seems sensible, even if it is not exactly what you wanted. Like you got to go along with it and you got to prop this person up and lift them up and
Yeah.
like give people a reason to believe. Like,
Well, and at this point, the Democrats could run on the border and the price of eggs.
Yes.
Because Trump has abandoned literally everything.
everything.
And the part of, I mean, I worked for two Republicans who really would not even fit in this Republican Party on the issue of immigration. What Trump's doing has never been popular.
No.
Interior enforcement has no support. What people can be made to fear are people here illegally that they don't know, that they've never met,
Exactly.
that aren't in their kids' schools, that aren't in their family town restaurants. And it's an ugly piece of human nature. But to the degree that Trump has found salience on immigration, it's about making people hate people they don't know. What Trump is doing is snatching, kidnapping, detaining, and sending to other countries, people that are part of communities.
He's almost making the argument for community bonds by
Correct.
like what he's doing on these
Correct.
immigration
And
dragnets. It's
against this
reinforced.
enforcement. Correct.
It's reinforced our connection to one another, right?
Right.
Like the guy that's like, working construction down the street that or the gardener or the line cook in the restaurant.
Or
You
the
like
straight A student in your kid's
or-
class,
or
or the girl or boy on their baseball team, or the volleyball. I mean,
All of it.
all these kids, and I mean, it's so awful that I mean, to your point, the Democrats could pick any piece of anything that's been debated, and Trump is either on the other side or has betrayed a promise on it.
there's that like slice of pro-lifers who will ride with him because he delivered Roe. But like everywhere else, the promises he's made to both his base and those that to poll test well with the American public, he's wrong everywhere. He's
Yeah.
so vulnerable and he's not going to be running, right? He
Right.
has someone who is way less charismatic. I'm assuming it's JD Vance, but like I could be Marco. I mean, who can even know? It's going to be like The
I
Apprentice.
think it could be Megyn Kelly or
Oh,
Tucker
oh my
Carlson. I mean,
God.
I think that'll be that clash, right? I mean, there's a reason that JD Vance.
I just threw up a little bit in my throat.
But if not, why else are they in bed with Nick Fuentes?
Because they want to be relevant. I mean, I'm just going to say that I think it's for the money and like the relevance and having the echo chamber. Like it makes me shudder to think of a Republican primary where it's Tucker Carlson v. Megyn Kelly v. like, I don't know, Nick
But can you
Fuentes
ima-
like stage managing the
Can you
whole
imagine
thing.
the
Like
primary,
what a
like
nightmare.
between like Megyn, Tucker, JD Vance, and Marco? I think it'll be 2015 all over again, and JD Vance and Marco will be out for. I mean, I really think that that's where, like, to the degree that I have any sense anymore of the right, I think that Tucker and Megyn have a lot of money, and I think they're keeping their options open.
That's just like a staggering thing to even really sort of bounce around in my head. But it does suggest to me that I think something that's true about the Republican Party right now, which is like, it is not like it used to be the institutionalists. It used to be the people that were sort of like hawks and had ideas about what conservatism meant. Now it's low propensity voters, people who are outside the system, and non-elites, right?
And disinformation.
Exactly. People for whom carnival barkers
Yeah.
and showmen and Barnum-like characters are going to resonate. And like,
Mhm.
if that's the future of the Republican Party, but like, and I don't want to just that those voters are a product of this society in this country, right?
Mhm.
Like, we got to fix that problem. Otherwise, we're going to keep getting these like bad shepherds, these empty vessels, these cynics in office. And that is our country. Like Donald Trump is a reflection of our country. And
Totally.
like we own it. Like you go abroad as an American, like you are tarred with those feathers. And like that is a deep problem that we need to fix in the 21st century, which I don't know how to do that.
It does make covering Trump at the time that you're raising little people,
Oh
raising
my-
children, all the more wrenching.
My children are like I don't want them to think it's a game. Like, it's so comically bad. It's so comically villainous. They're like, what'd Trump do today? And I'm like, let's look at this in terms of it's like a real issue with real human cost. And then they get like very upset. And it's this constant navigation between telling them what's actually happening and like grounding it in reality, and then also not freaking them out to the degree that they're like, I'm going to get swept up in an ICE raid. Like, I'm going to get sent to CCOT, and so keeping it light. Like, it's politics, it's very, very hard to calibrate. But one thing is for sure, like, when they hear me speaking in hushed tones about anything, they're like, is it Trump related? They're like, what's going on? It's just it's a daily saga, and they want to know what the like plot line is.
It's really tricky. And you don't ever want them to be scared. But it is a really complicated thing.
And I also, like, I think there's a thing too where I'm hyper conscious of the fact that I'm raising boys, right? And like, they're young boys. So they're not they have attitudes like they're like 16. But I'm also really conscious of like, because I do think, and as I think about like why Trump has been so successful, I'm like, where did liberalism and like where did progressivism sort of fail, if not in substance, then at least in rhetoric
and vibes
with young men? Like, how do I have my boys grow into men who can embrace, I think, better ideals, about where we should be as a country and what our democracy could look like, in a way that still feels authentic to them, that gives them a sense of masculinity. Like, it's very complicated.
It's really tricky.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
And I listen to Scott Galloway. Like, I listen to
I was about to say, Scott Galloway, I know is sort of a lightning rod, but he's one of those voices, in the center and on the left that speaks to all men, but especially men that don't want to model the toxic masculinity of the right.
I'm just like, I'm going to love the shit out of you guys. I'm going to model a happy old woman. And even though I'm divorced, my ex-husband is going to treat me like a queen. Like, that's what we're doing here. Like,
yeah,
it's be
happy blended families.
Lots of love, lots of engagement, lots of joy.
Yeah.
But it's daunting.
It's daunting. And in our free time, right, between covering Trump, raising children, it's like, how are you a radically positive force without being a toxic positive force?
Right. Like, Stepford Wife.
Fucking fake.
Yes. I think as moms and as women, I think I'm one of the reasons I love you is because you are such a genuinely kind person, but you're also not insincere about it. Like, when things are shitty or like you don't like something, you're honest about it. And that's the kind of person I'm attracted to.
I'm having an I hate everyone week where you're one of the only people like on the boat. I'm rowing away, and
how
you're
much
in the
longer
boat.
are we recording?
No, you're in the boat, but we're rowing fast. No, I mean, because some weeks just suck.
But I think it's about being honest, both with yourself and your kids and your loved ones, about like, I'm having a shit week.
Yeah.
And it's vulnerable. And like, sometimes I do apologize to my kids. Like, I'll scream at them about like something like a shoe being in the left and the wrong place. I'm like, oh, I am a terror. I'm a holy terror. It's a lot, man.
It's a lot.
Everybody's living with a lot.
I know.
Can I say, even if they're not in the news industry and they're not even engaged in politics, the 21st century is a lot.
I say that sometimes. Like, I know, like I can't believe anyone watches the show at all. And I'm like, I'll say that sometimes. And like, I know the news is a lot. Thank you so much for watching. And like, however many minutes you watch, thank you. And I think there's like this tension, but I'm so grateful. And after the election, like, that anyone would come on my show at all. I remember after Trump won, I was worried about a lot of things, but mostly I was like, oh my God, I have 2 hours.
I know.
Who is going to come back tomorrow?
Everyone.
And I will never forget the people. Like, you came back, Tim Miller came back. There were a lot of, Mark Elias came back, Maya Wiley came back. There were a lot of people though who were like, no, I need to catch my breath. And I was like,
no.
Okay, well, call me. I'll be on every day. And
wait a second. If you go through a traumatic experience, the first person you call is your shrink. You get back in that chair. Like, that's what it is.
No, like,
because
Izzy
you're
fell
giving
in the park today, and I was like, oh, back. She's like, can I go to the stroller? I said, nope, we're walking. I mean, no, like, that's right. But I think a lot of people after November were like, I'm out.
I think you're miscalculating what you do and what the show is, and to some degree what the MS Now audience is and what the Best People audience is. It's like, you're giving them something, and it is a group. It is catharsis. It is. That's why I think we're drawn to podcasts too, because it's like, let's just fucking go for it. Let's get into the juicy parts. You know what I mean? Let's peer under the rug. People need that. Like, we're living in these very, like, there's a lot of strictures. There's a lot of like, you can do this, you can. And And I don't mean like in terms of PC. It's just like we limit a lot of our
Yeah,
lives
yeah,
because
yeah.
we're just trying to manage the insanity. And
Right.
so like the looseness and the comfort and the conviviality and the generosity that are such a hallmark of you and your show.
Aw.
I mean, it's why it's great that you have 2 hours because you
Wow.
can just stretch out, man. I know it's a lot
Well,
for you, but for
it's a
the rest
lot,
of
but it
us,
also I feel like you know, I think it's what is it, Under Armour or Nike, like the only way out is through, right?
it's
Like
true.
the only way, and like I think because we have kids and lives, like you can't just like hunker down for 4 years. Like we have to thrive. These are their like formative years. I can't like chalk it
Oh,
up and like go be in a, you know, bear hibernating for 4 years. I also think you have to look at the right and how they thrive or they put on their game face no matter who wins an election.
joyful warriors.
They are, and a former general said that to me. He said, learn to love the brawl. And I was like, what?
It's the only way you're gonna. It's the only way a Democrat wins.
Yeah. Someone who,
And
like
that's
a
why
happy,
Newsom
like,
has bottled something because he's
correct. And
relishing
Pritzker.
it, right?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
doing his show and he was like, and these are the Trump knee pads. And it's just like, it's a lot
Yeah.
for a lot of people, but it's someone who is like fully in the game and happy to sell the merch. And he has a spiritedness to him that is really intoxicating.
One toughness. I mean,
Yeah.
because I think the other thing about Trump too is he'll avoid the people that bark back, right? Like you read about, you know, how to make your house less appetizing to a burglar. And you
How
know,
do
you have
you
a
know that?
dog, you have floodlights, and you just make it
Oh,
that doesn't protect you. But like I feel like Trump is sort of like that. Like if you're slightly less easy of a mark, he'll just move on to the next one because he's got Paul Weiss and he's got Columbia. Like there's so many people capitulating in advance that like if you push back a little bit,
I know Jerome Powell.
he just moves on.
Well, but I mean, Newsom, I think, not to dwell too much on him, he is obsessed with Gavin Newsom and keeps going back to him,
Correct.
I think, because he thinks
Well,
he's the
they're
front
in a
runner.
relationship
They
now.
are.
They're have you seen Lego Batman? They're like the Joker,
Yes.
but like I don't know who I am without you. Like
Yes.
they're sort of in a symbiotic duel.
I think it's bonus if he goes on to move past you, but
Yeah.
like you got to enter the arena prepared for blood sport every day.
Yeah, I
Like
think
that's the
that's
only
right.
way you tackle this head on. That's the only way you get through it. And that's the only way we as a country get through it.
How much progress are you prepared for him to make in reshaping the media over 4 years?
Oh, a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's not like we're in the 1970s and it's like everybody sits down at 6 p.m. to watch Walter Cronkite, right? We are in a moment of like great fracture.
Like even absent Trump.
Right. And
Yeah.
he's seizing
Yeah.
the media. He's going in for the kill when there's disarray, which makes it a very precarious moment, right? Like, I mean, as someone who does stuff with MS Now, but also lives in the internet podcast space with Substack and podcasts, like it's just insane moments of disruption. And so money, if you can throw it at a company, becomes really attractive no matter where that money is from, whether it's MBS funding a major media merger or the Ellisons. You know, it's hard for these companies to say no. And like, you know, none of the owners of these companies have proven any particular interest in the fourth estate.
Why aren't they interested in America remaining a democracy? Like, why doesn't Larry Ellison care about that?
I think they don't think of it that way. I think they think it's overblown. I think they think all the criticisms of what's happening at CBS are complete convections of the left. And it's just, you know, scuttlebutt inside media circles. And it's, you know, if you watch that show every day, you'd get like good balanced news. And it's, we have to talk to more people and blah, blah, blah. I mean, people make justifications for anything.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, I mean, I think some of their motivations are probably the same as Trump's. They like the ego. They like being in control of 60 Minutes and CBS
Yeah.
News, you know?
But to what end? To destroy them?
I don't think they think of it as destruction. I think initially it's probably like the Bezos thing, right? Like I'm buying the Washington Post. I'm going to be the white knight that's going to see the rejuvenation of this media property. And then they kind of get tired of it or they're not in it for the long haul or it becomes financially unfeasible and they sell it for parts, which I think is the destiny for most of these institutions. Is just we are now becoming a content factory less than a democracy with major fourth estate institutions. And
Yeah.
it's just going to be a content war of like who has the most content that gets the most eyeballs, which is why the Department of War can send out videos of Grand Theft Auto spliced with bombings in Iran and it goes viral. I mean, that's
Sick.
fucking insane.
It's insane. What gives you hope? Like when you look around or walk around?
I mean, there's like so many ways to answer this. Being in Minnesota at the darkest moments of this whole Alex Preddy, Renee Good, the wake of all that, and going to the house of this mom who was like worked for this, I don't know, the city doing something. She's like, I feel really guilty because I'm supposed to come home and like be with my kids because it's my time to be with them. And instead, I'm on spreadsheets figuring out the carpooling situation and the grocery situation so that we can continue our network of getting food and transportation to teachers who are here legally, but are Spanish speaking and may be here on green cards. Like they had created an entire underground network, these moms and dads from this bilingual school, to protect and shield and help the education professionals and staffers at the school who were at risk of deportation and dragnets.
Incredible.
And I remember thinking like, oh, okay, this is a little taste of what it was like in Berlin and Germany in the 1930s, right? Like you don't imagine normal people doing extraordinary things, but that was what was happening so quickly without thought. And it really reminded me that we share a belief in the common good and that like we are in it together. And in times where that's really tested, people show up. So that gave me like a lot of hope, right? And I was just like, God, I want to show up like that too.
Totally.
I feel like as bad as it is, the fact, I mean, Trump he has destroyed so much of what we thought we had built up. But I do think we move in discrete ways towards being better to each other and like knowing how to be better to each other in intrapersonal relationships, in personal relationships, you know, how to treat someone you love, whether that's your lover or your husband or your mother or your children. I feel like the generation I'm raising and the generation you're raising, like we think about boys and masculinity and kindness and empathy. Like we're really thinking about stuff in a deeper way.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to malign my mom's generation, but I just think we're newly awoken to like the ways we can be better human beings.
Yeah, and I think to their generation, I think it's a credit to how they raised us, right? We're like the self-improving generation.
Yeah.
And so what we're passing on hopefully innovates beyond that, right? Like we're constantly seeking and the connections are so rooted in doing better, right? And maybe their connections will be rooted in something else. Because I was thinking about this moment and what we cover and why we cover what we cover. And it is literally like the broadest story. The broadest story that we cover is the president.
Yeah.
And so like we push everything through a sieve of what impacts the most people. And the fact that 65% of the country has the same opinion about Donald Trump is this thing that it doesn't always viscerally connect with what I'm covering. Sometimes it feels like, oh my God, how can he be operating with so much impunity when only 35% of the country wants any of it? And so to me, it's like the thing that gives me hope is that so many people that take in a lot of information about Trump aren't going in multiple directions. They go in one direction, right? His approval rating only goes down. It doesn't like bounce up when they get the facts about something. The more they learn, the less they like him. And that, for some reason, as someone in the content industry, gives me some hope. But
No,
that sort of feels like pinball. I don't know.
Well, I mean, because we don't focus on the goodness of the rejection, you know, like the rejection
It's
is not
informed rejection.
we focus on the sins that are being visited on us today, right? And there's a lot of indignation around that. But the other side of that is people saying unilaterally, like, no, we don't want any more of this.
Yeah.
And I do feel like this time is different than it was in 2016.
Yeah.
Like I mean, not that he's running again, but I mean, we're still good people.
Yeah.
As much as we tell ourselves like all this horrible shit is happening, we're still a good people.
Yeah.
I mean, but also like, you know, for better or for worse, people find hope, and I find hope in ways that exist outside of politics, you know, and I think
The
that's,
Mets.
oh my,
Baseball, right?
I mean,
kids, yeah.
Juan Soto,
Yeah.
Francisco
they're
Lindor.
so
I'm sorry
cute.
about Pete Alonso. My
I
children aren't as
know,
sorry as I am.
know.
The New York Mets are a source of pride. You know, deep plane facelifts are intriguing, maybe a source of
I
hope.
can't stop reading about them. You're a
They take your
specimen.
face off
No,
your face.
I can't stop reading about them in horror and awe.
Sign me up. And, you know, like the discreet joy of like living on the most beautiful. I sound like I'm stoned, but the like we're destroying the planet, but right now it's so fucking
It's beautiful.
beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like a
yeah.
wondrous place.
I
And
know.
like you gotta like sometimes just put the noise on ice and be like,
Totally.
holy shit, it's beautiful in spring, you know?
No, it is beautiful. It's beautiful. I love being your friend.
I love being your friend.
I love
I
that
really,
you're
I've said
here.
it so much, but I just
No, no,
believe
no.
it.
I love it so
truly.
much.
And
And
my-
whenever I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to do the news, like, oh, we'll get wax
well,
here.
girl, I got a surprise for you today.
You're the best. Thank you so
You're
much.
the
for
best.
doing
You're
this.
the best people.
No,
Thank
you're
you,
the
Nicole.
best people. Thank you for doing this.
Of course, my pleasure.